A love that feels like coming home. Tony Rodriguez had built his empire on discipline and distance. The oil fields had taught him early that emotions were a liability, and so he'd buried them under layers of deals, boardrooms, and hard-won victories. By 45, he was one of the most powerful oil tycoons in Texas. Yet, when the call came about his estranged mother's passing, he felt something unfamiliar, an ache he thought he'd long buried. Reluctantly, he returned to his childhood home, a modest house that stood in stark contrast to his glass towers and sprawling estates. Dust lay thick on the furniture, and silence pressed in from the walls. He told himself he was there only to clean, to finalize paperwork, to close another chapter. But life had other plans. One crisp afternoon, a knock at the door introduced him to Maria. She was younger than him, in her early 30s, with a searching gaze and a warmth that unsettled him. She explained she was looking for her birth mother, a woman who had once worked for the Rodriguez family decades ago. Tony, stiff and guarded, initially wanted to send her away, but something in her eyes, a mixture of hope and sorrow, pulled him in. Against his instincts, he invited her in. Their first conversations were tentative, circling around memories Tony had tried to forget and questions Maria wasn't sure she wanted answered. Yet, as the days stretched on, Maria's presence softened the house. She filled the air with laughter when she unearthed old records, with compassion when she noticed Tony's hesitation in talking about his childhood, and with courage as she pursued answers about her identity. Tony surprised himself when he agreed to help her. Together, they traced faded photographs, followed paper trails, and pieced together stories buried in old letters. Their journey soon took them beyond the small house, across Texas highways, into towns Tony hadn't visited in decades. On the road, something shifted. Tony found himself sharing stories about his father's harshness, his mother's quiet strength, and the boy he had once been before. Ambition swallowed him whole. He confessed the loneliness that lingered even at the top of his empire. Maria listened without judgment, her presence both anchor and mirror, reminding him of the man he still could be. Maria, in turn, shared her struggles. Though engaged to a man waiting back home, she admitted her heart was restless. She longed for honesty, for love that didn't feel like settling. Helping Tony stirred something in her, a recognition of her own bravery and vulnerability. One evening, after a long day of searching, they sat by a quiet river. The sunset cast golden light across the water, and silence stretched comfortably between them. Tony looked at her, really looked at her, and realized he hadn't felt this alive in years. She turned, caught his gaze, and for a moment the world stilled. Their connection was undeniable, but it was more than attraction. It was the way they unlocked each other's truths. The turning point came when Maria finally discovered her birth mother. The reunion was tender, complicated, and bittersweet. Tony stood by her side, offering strength without words. In that moment, Maria understood that love wasn't just about comfort. It was about someone who would stand with you in the hardest parts of life. For Tony, watching Maria embrace her mother was like watching the possibility of healing unfold in front of him. If she could face her past and choose connection over fear, maybe he could too. But Maria's fiancé was still waiting, and the reality of her engagement loomed large. One night, she confessed to Tony, tears in her eyes, that she felt torn. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she whispered. Tony, heart heavy, told her she deserved to choose love freely, not out of duty. It was a risk, laying his heart bare after years of silence. Yet, in that vulnerability, Tony discovered a strength greater than any boardroom victory. Maria returned home briefly to confront her truth. Days passed, heavy with uncertainty, until she appeared again on Tony's doorstep. Her eyes carried the weight of decisions made, but her smile was radiant. "I chose love," she said simply. Relief and joy surged through Tony, and for the first time in decades, the house felt alive again. Their love was not a fairy tale of instant happily ever afters. It was built on conversations late into the night, on confronting grief and old wounds, on laughter that lightened the burdens of the past. It was rooted in honesty and the courage to start again. For Tony, Maria was more than a companion. She was the bridge back to his family, to forgiveness, to the boy he once was. For Maria, Tony was proof that true love was not about perfection, but about presence and truth. By the end of their journey, the house Tony once dreaded returning to had become a symbol of hope. Together, they began sketching a new chapter, one not defined by fear or distance, but by the kind of love that felt like coming home.